In a quiet cul-de-sac in suburban Georgia, everyone knew the rules. And everyone knew Karen. That wasn't her real name. Her real name was Linda Wexler, but even the mailman called her Karen behind her back. With a clipboard in one hand, and binoculars in the other, she treated her position on the HOA board like she was guarding the gates of Fort Knox. But all it took to light the match was a simple driveway. Not just any driveway, was Caleb Turner's driveway. Newly purchased home, newly moved in, and completely unaware that he'd just become enemy number one. Scene opens, Caleb unloading boxes from his pickup truck. Caleb was a quiet 35 web developer who had finally escaped city life for a quieter, more peaceful place. He bought the corner house at the end of the street, complete with a long private driveway that curved neatly behind a pair of flowering dogwood trees. His only mistake, thinking privacy still existed in an HOA neighborhood. Scene shift. Caleb returns from the grocery store and finds a beige Lexus SUV parked in the middle of his driveway. He blinked. It wasn't his car. He didn't recognize it, and it was definitely blocking access to his garage. He knocked on a few doors, nobody answered. Just when he was about to call the non-emergency line, a sharp voice cut through the air. Karen, Linda, oh, you're the new guy, you don't mind, right? I've always parked here. Everyone knows this driveway's just kind of. Community overflow. Caleb stared at her. Community overflow. This was his deeded driveway, clearly marked on the property line. Caleb, sorry, but this is private property. I need it clear. Karen, smiling but tight-jawed. You'll understand eventually. I'm the HOA vice president. We like to keep things neighborly. The next morning, she was back. Same spot, same SUV. Different excuse. Karen, I just needed to drop something off at Diane's. It's quicker if I cut across your driveway. Caleb bit his tongue. For now, but that evening, he installed a motion sensor gate. Scene. Karen nearly drives into the new gate. Screeching to a halt, Karen furious. You can't do this. This is against the rules. I'll file a complaint. CALEB.com. Actually, I already cleared it with the city and checked my deed. It's mine. HOA can't touch it. That's when the war began. Overnight, someone dumped a bag of trash at the end of his driveway. HOA notices began to appear, complaints about unapproved architecture, non-compliant fence materials, and even excessive squirrel feeding, each one signed by Vice President Linda Wexler. But Caleb wasn't the type to back down. And what Karen didn't know was that Caleb had receipts. Not just for his driveway, but for everything. So what would you do if someone tried to turn your property into their parking spot and then declared war when you said no? Stick around, because next, Caleb takes the battle to the HOA board and exposes something nobody saw coming by the end of the week. Caleb had received 4 violation notices, a $50 fine, and a sarcastic welcome to the neighborhood card taped to his mailbox. Unsigned, of course, but the glitter inside, that was pure Karen energy. He didn't say a word. Instead, Caleb sat on his back porch with a beer, scrolling through the HOA bylaws he'd downloaded in full, all 86 pages. He even highlighted sections with colors. This was war, and Caleb Turner came armed with a printer, a highlighter, and a deep understanding of passive aggression. Scene. HOA monthly meeting. Community clubhouse. The room smelled like old donuts and lemon-scented floor wax. Currency. Linda stood at the front, wearing her signature floral blazer and reading glasses that she never actually used. Linda, we've had several complaints about an unauthorized security gate installed at Lot 42. It's become a safety hazard and eyesore. CALEB, interrupting.com and firm. According to page 14, Section 3, Subsection A, private driveways are exempt from aesthetic committee oversight if not shared or accessible by other residents. The room went dead quiet. Linda blinked. Somewhere, a coffee mug clinked against a folding table. Caleb didn't sit down. Caleb continuing. And by the way, I had the gate approved by the city. Code 7 to 208, residential modifications. I submitted the paperwork to the board 2 weeks ago. I can resend it if it got lost. Linda shuffled her notes. No one on the board backed her up. Even Diane, her usual sidekick, avoided eye contact and started texting under the table. Linda tried to recover. With a strained smile, Linda, let's move on. 2 squirrel feeding ordinances. Yes, squirrel feeding. Apparently, Caleb's occasional habit of tossing peanuts to a couple of regular backyard visitors was now causing rodent overpopulation. Scene, Caleb at home, receiving another violation. Slip, he walks over to neighbor Sam, an elderly veteran who had been living in the neighborhood for 20 years. Caleb, hey Sam, did you ever get fined for feeding birds? Sam grinning, only after Linda saw me doing it from her kitchen window. Sam gave Caleb a worn manila folder full of past HOA letters and old board minutes. Caleb sat down that night and dug through them like a forensic detective. That's when he saw it. A signature, dated 3 years ago. From the previous HOA president, a woman named Marcia Keller. She'd written a note stating that Linda Wexler does not have voting authority on board decisions without majority presence or approval. Caleb checked the current board structure. Linda was acting as president but had never officially been elected. She was vice president by appointment, and the president's position vacant, meaning everything she had done for months. Every fine, every letter could be invalid. Scene, Caleb standing outside Linda's house, holding a letter and a clipboard of printouts. Caleb, this is your cease and desist notice. If you continue trespassing on my driveway or issuing illegal fines, I'll file formal complaints with the county and HOA arbitration board. Linda laughing nervously. You don't know how these things work, Caleb. I've been running this place for 10 years. CALEB. Then maybe it's time someone else had a turn. Linda didn't respond, but she did slam her door so hard, her decorative wind chime cracked. Later that night, Caleb spotted her Lexus creeping slowly past his house, stopping just long enough to take pictures. But Linda wasn't going to go down without a fight. And Caleb, he had no idea how deep her influence ran or what she was about to dig up from his past. If you thought this was just about a driveway, think again. What did Linda find? Why is Caleb suddenly receiving anonymous complaints about his business? And who's secretly helping her behind the scenes? After Caleb's calm takedown at the HOA meeting, most neighbors thought the battle had ended. But for Linda Wexler, losing ground wasn't an option, it was a declaration of war. And war meant research, surveillance, character assassination. Scene, Caleb working at his dining table. An envelope slides under his door, no return address. No stamps, just a plain white envelope. Inside, a printed screenshot of his old business Yelp page with a 2-star review circled in red marker. Underneath it, a sticky note. Some of us like to know who we're living next to. Caleb hadn't seen that review in years. It was from a disgruntled ex-client who bailed halfway through a website redesign and blamed Caleb for the fallout. Caleb, muttering, she really went there. He shrugged it off. Until the next day when he received an email from the HOA account, stating his business activity from home was now under review. Never mind that Caleb wasn't running a business out of his home. He was a salaried employee for a remote company. But Linda didn't need facts, just rumors, and it didn't stop there. Scene montage. The mail stops arriving for 2 days. A landscaping crew shows up claiming Caleb's lawn was scheduled for correction by HOA order. His trash bins are found tipped over and photographed in the HOA Facebook group as evidence of ongoing nuisance behavior. Caleb had had enough. He called the HOA's registered legal office. They confirmed Linda had no authority to conduct personal investigations or enforce fines without a board vote. So why was she acting like she owned the neighborhood? Scene, Caleb meets Sam and another neighbor, Tasha, on the sidewalk. Tasha, she did the same to me when I refused to host her fundraiser in my backyard. Filed noise complaints over my wind chimes. Sam, she's got dirt on half the board. Old favors, photos, stuff nobody talks about. And now it made sense. Linda didn't just run the HOA. She ran fear, blackmail, whispers, quiet threats no one could prove. Caleb leaned in. Caleb, then we hit her where it hurts. Transparency. Scene, Caleb begins recording everything: phone calls, gate camera, footage, even HOA meetings. He builds a file. He pulled city records, dug up every open complaint, and made copies of every board meeting that Linda had conducted without quorum. But the kicker, a letter from the county assessor, confirming something wild. Linda's own property line was 5 feet shorter than she claimed, meaning her SUV had never had legal access to Caleb's driveway. Not even partially. Scene, Caleb attends the next board meeting. This time, he brings a folder and a portable projector. Linda walked in confident, powdered nose, ready for a public shaming of Caleb's no compliance. Instead, Caleb queued up surveillance clips her walking across his lawn, her scribbling notes outside his gate, her SUV parked illegally, time-stamped her voice on voicemail making veiled threats, and finally, The legal documents disproving her claims. Caleb firmly. According to HOA regulations and Georgia property law, everything you've done violates multiple codes. I'm filing a grievance and submitting this file to our county's mediation office. The room went cold. Linda tried to speak, but the board president pro tem, Mr. Doyle, finally broke his silence. Mr. Doyle, Linda, we're putting you on administrative leave until this is reviewed. You'll relinquish your voting authority, effective immediately. For the first time, she had no words. But Caleb saw something in her eyes as she packed up her folder. Not shame, not regret, just pause. Like she was calculating her next move. And he was right, because 2 days later, a city official showed up at Caleb's door with a clipboard. We've had a zoning inquiry regarding your garage addition. Mind if I take a look? This wasn't over. Not even close. Linda had more tricks up her sleeve, and Caleb's own property was now under official inspection. But who filed the complaint? And why was the city involved? When the city inspector knocked on Caleb's door, clipboard in hand, it didn't feel like a random check. It felt like a setup. And by now, Caleb knew exactly whose fingerprints would be all over it. City inspector, we got a complaint that your garage expansion violates setback regulations. Gonna need to take some photos, verify dimensions. CALEB. I haven't touched the garage. It was built in 1993 original structure. City inspector. Well, we still gotta look. Complaints formal. Caleb let him in. The inspector measured, scribbled, clicked a few photos, and left with a quick nod. No citation issued. Yet, but Linda had escalated. She was no longer just abusing HOA policies now, she was pulling city levers. And Caleb knew, if she'd stooped to that, she'd stoop to anything. Scene. Caleb meets with Tasha and Sam again at a local coffee shop. Tasha concerned. She did the same to my brother 2 years ago. Called child services on him. Said his trampoline was a safety hazard for the neighborhood. Sam, she's got a buddy on the zoning committee. Used to work with her husband before he left town. The more they pieced together, the clearer it became. Linda didn't just control the HOH, weaponized it, using city contacts, backdoor complaints, and technicalities to punish anyone who crossed her. But Caleb had something she didn't expect. Public records, digital breadcrumbs, and neighbors who'd finally had enough. Scene. Caleb visits the local municipal building. Files a request under the Freedom of Information Act. He requested every complaint submitted under his name for the past 30 days. The clerk raised an eyebrow at the thick stack. Clerk, whoever's doing this, really doesn't like your garage. No kidding. The stack included a zoning complaint, noise violation, a suspected unlicensed home business inquiry, and seriously a report about illegal squirrel. BREEDING, reading aloud. Squirrel trafficking is a growing problem in suburban areas. He laughed hard for the first time in weeks, but beneath that laugh was something sharper, focus, strategy. He wasn't going to wait for the next attack. He was going to bring the whole thing into daylight. Scene. Caleb attends a community potluck. Casual, food-filled, innocent until it wasn't. He brought a folder labeled Your HOA Dues at Work. Tasha brought cookies. Sam brought a slideshow. They didn't shout. They didn't accuse. They simply showed the double standards in violation. Noticized the misuse of funds on beautification projects that only benefited Linda's property. Copies of multiple complaints all traced to the same HOA email address, and the kicker, video of Linda admitting in a voice message, we can make his life difficult if he doesn't learn. Neighbors were stunned. Even Diane, Linda's closest ally, leaned back and crossed her arms like she'd been punched in the chest. Diane, she told me she had board approval for all of this. CALEB. She didn't. I checked, and the board is you guys. Not just her. By the time the potluck ended, half the room had signed a petition, not just to suspend Linda but to formally audit her activity as vice president. That night, Caleb sat on his porch with Sam, watching the sunset. Sam, you just kicked a hornet's nest, kid. CALEB. Then I hope they like squirrel bait. But, just as things were turning, a loud crack echoed from the side of the house. Caleb and Sam rushed around the corner only to find Caleb's gate busted open. His motion sensor light was shattered. His security camera ripped clean off the mount. This wasn't a prank, it was a message. Linda had gone silent, but now things were getting physical. Who broke the gate? Was this intimidation? Or something more? And how far would she go to stay in power? The busted gate was no accident. The shattered security camera. Deliberate. Caleb didn't say a word that night, but the moment he stepped back into the house, he did 3 things. He installed 2 backup cameras. He called the sheriff's non-emergency line to report vandalism. And then he opened the manila folder Sam had handed him earlier that week, marked only with the words, Linda, prior incidents. Inside were documents going back years old, HOA letters, neighborhood emails, even scanned copies of warnings from past residents. One stood out. A signed statement from a former neighbor named Marcia Kellerius, the same Marcia who used to be HOA president. Marcia had moved out suddenly, 5 years ago. Rumor was she relocated for work. But according to the letter, Linda forced her out. The letter read, she threatened me with exposure. Something about my son's college fund. But the worst part, she keeps files on everyone. In her shed, back corner, blue toolbox. I saw her flipping through them the night before I left. Caleb stared at the letter for a long time. Then he stood up, grabbed a flashlight, and walked out the back door. Scene. Late night. Caleb creeps along the fence line between his yard and Linda's. He wasn't proud of what he was about to do, but someone had broken into his property, destroyed his gate, threatened him, and if Linda had a shed full of dirt on neighbors, then it wasn't just HOA abuse. It was blackmail. Scene. Caleb slips through a loose board in the fence and creeps up to the back of Linda's shed. The door is padlocked but poorly. He uses a small pry bar. The lock pops with a dull click. Inside, the shed smelled like fertilizer and old paint, but in the far corner, just like Marcia said, was a dusty blue Craftsman toolbox. He opened it. Inside were envelopes. Dozens of them, each labeled by house, number and last name. Lot 12. Diane R-2008 divorce filing. Lot 7. Mr. Doyle, tax lien warning. Lot 16. Tasha juvenile record sealed, and at the very back, Lot 42. Turner. Caleb, business complaint archive. She wasn't just guessing. She had done her research. Deep, invasive research on everyone. Printouts, notes, photos, even old court documents. He took pictures of everything, left the files exactly how he found them, locked the shed, slipped back through the fence, and just before dawn, he sent the photos to Tasha, Sam, and Diane. Scene. Next HOA meeting. Tense air, folding chairs packed. Neighbors whispering. Linda enters late, trying to keep composure. Caleb waited until the meeting opened. Then he stood, pulled out his phone, and said 3 words. Caleb, I found the files. Gasps, murmurs, people shifting in their seats. Diane stood up beside him. Diane, I saw them too. She kept blackmail material on all of us, to control us. Linda defensive. That's ridiculous. That's private information. I was protecting the neighborhood from Tasha. From what? From knowing the truth about you. The room turned on her like a tide. Sam, calm but firm, dropped emotion on the table. Sam, I moved to suspend Linda Wexler indefinitely. Pending investigation. Effective immediately. The vote passed. Unanimous. Linda stood frozen. For the first time, she had no script, no backup. She stormed out, slamming the community center door so hard it rattled the flagpole. But the damage had already been done. Not to Caleb. To her. And yet, the story wasn't over. Scene. 2 nights later. Caleb receives a handwritten note in his mailbox. No envelope, no name, just a sentence. You shouldn't have gone into the shed. That night, Caleb's motion light clicked on again, but this time, nothing was broken, no one was visible, just a shadow, watching, then disappearing into the trees. Linda may be suspended, but someone out there is still loyal to her hand. Caleb's uncovered more than just HOA corruption. What else is buried in this neighborhood's past? The note said, you shouldn't have gone into the shed. No signature, no return. Just a threat dropped quietly into Caleb's mailbox. And a shadow that vanished into the night like smoke. Caleb hadn't slept. Not really. The shed, the files, the blackmail, it was bigger than just HOA harassment. Now. This was personal. Scene. Caleb sits at his dining table reviewing photos from the shed. His eyes keep going back to one folder. Lot 14. James O'Brien, prior investigations. James O'Brien, former police officer, current board member, quiet, never spoke at meetings. Voted along with Linda every time. Caleb barely remembered his face. But the file in her shed had pages of notes, employment records, Disciplinary reviews. One photo stuck out. James shaking hands with a man in a dark suit captioned, Special Projects Private Security, minus 2016. That night, Caleb pulled his trash bin to the curb and noticed a black Dodge Charger idling 3 houses down, lights off, windows tinted. The next morning, the same car sat parked near the community clubhouse. Same plate, and someone was watching him again. Scene, Caleb calls the county sheriff's office and asks for a follow-up on his vandalism report. They agree to send someone over. The deputy arrived an hour later. Older guy, wore mirrored sunglasses even in the shade. Deputy Reynolds, name's Reynolds. You the one with the busted gate. CALEB, that's me. And the busted light. And the threatening note. Reynolds listened quietly. Didn't take notes. Just nodded and chewed the inside of his cheek. Caleb. Carefully. I think someone in my HOA is pulling favors with city contacts, and I think one of your former officers might be involved. Reynolds, after a pause, James O'Brien. CALEB, blinking. Yeah, how'd you know? Reynolds, he retired early, had some heat on him. Nothing proven, but word was he worked some side jobs. Not exactly legal. That sent a chill down Caleb's spine. This wasn't just HOA pettiness anymore. This was a network connections between Linda, O'Brien, and even former cops. Reynolds quiet. You want my advice? Keep your head down. These people, they don't like losing power. Reynolds left without filing anything. No case number. No follow-up. Just a warning, wrapped in a shrug. But that only made Caleb more determined. Scene. Caleb and Tasha meet in the library, where she's pulled more HOA records from the public archive. Tasha, check this. 5 people who filed complaints against Linda in the past decade, all moved out within 6 months. Caleb, voluntarily. TASHA. Nope, citations, fines, foreclosures. They weren't just pushed out, they were targeted. One of them, Marcia Keller, the ex-HOA president who warned Caleb in that letter. Caleb tried to call her number, disconnected, so he found her name on Facebook. Still active, he sent her a message. I know about the shed. About the files, about Linda. I think it's happening again. She responded just 5 minutes later. Meet me. But not at your house. Scene. A diner off the highway. Marcia sits in a booth, wearing sunglasses and a ball cap. Caleb joins her. Marcia looked over her shoulder twice before speaking. Marcia, you think Linda's the top of this. She's not. She's the loud one. The enforcer. But the guy you really need to worry about is the one who gave her the power to begin with. Caleb, O'Brien. MARSHA. No. Higher. HOA was just the front. They were moving money through neighborhood beautification projects, phone contracts, fake consulting fees. I saw one check. 10 grand. Went to a company that doesn't exist. Caleb sat back, absorbing it all. Fraught cover-ups. Intimidation. His fight had started with a driveway. But now he was tangled in something that looked a lot like organized corruption. Marcia, serious, walk away. Caleb, you've made your point, you won. But if you keep digging, they'll bury you like they buried the last guy. Caleb, who was the last guy? Marcia didn't answer. She just slid a folded photo across the table and stood up. It was an image of a man in front of Caleb's house, years before he bought it. A man who looked like Caleb. Same build, same beard, but the words written in red ink. Missing. 2019. Case closed. Linda's just the beginning and someone has vanished for getting too close to the truth. Who was the man in the photo? What happened to him? And why did he live in Caleb's house before him? The man in the photo looked eerily like Caleb, same eyes, same frame, even the same faint scar near the jawline. But it wasn't Caleb. It was someone who had vanished 6 years ago, from the very house Caleb now lived in. The back read, missing. Anthony Griggs, Lot 42. Case closed, no foul play. No foul play. Then why did the photo feel like a warning? Scene. Caleb sits at his kitchen table, staring at the image. His laptop glows with an old real estate record pulled from the county's site. He traced it back. The name Griggs was listed as the owner of Lot 42 until 2019. When it was sold, suddenly cash deal. No realtor, pushed through in under 2 weeks. The buyer? A shell company out of Delaware. Then a year later, it sold again. This time, to the couple Caleb bought it from. Which meant for 1 full year. The house was owned by no one real. Scene. Caleb makes a visit to the sheriff's department, asking to see the missing persons file. The receptionist frowned as she tapped the keys. Receptionist, says the file's been sealed. CALEBY. Receptionist, only sealed at the request of law enforcement or family. Sorry, but Caleb didn't leave empty-handed. A deputy walking by recognized the name. Deputy Marino quietly Griggs, worked in financial compliance. Ran into some HOA nonsense. One day he just vanished. Wife filed the report, but dropped it 3 weeks later. CALEB, dropped it. Marino nods. Moved out same week. Left the state. Wouldn't answer questions. Something wasn't adding up. And someone, maybe some people, had gone to great lengths to cover it up. That night, Caleb sat on his porch, watching the driveway like a hawk. The black Dodge Charger hadn't returned, but he knew eyes were still on him. Then, just after midnight, his motion light snapped on. This time, he didn't wait. He was out the door in seconds. Flashlight in one hand, phone in the other. But what he found wasn't what he expected. A folded manila envelope on the ground, weighted down with a rock. Scene. Caleb opens it inside, hands shaking slightly. Inside is a single USB stick and a printed note. Anthony recorded everything. You should too. A friend. The USB held one video file. TIMESTAMP. November 18, 2019. Location, Caleb's house. Different furniture, but same layout. The man in the video was Anthony Griggs. Anthony on video. Visibly nervous. If something happens to me, I want people to know Linda Wexler and James O'Brien are stealing money through the HOA. They set up a fake contractor named North Pine Restoration. They use it to siphon funds from beautification projects. They threaten people who ask questions. He swallowed, Anthony continuing. I found invoices that don't match bank records. I've already submitted them to the state, but I think someone's watching me. They tampered with my truck. I can't prove it. But if this video's playing, something went wrong. Caleb rewound the video. Frame by frame, studying every detail. There on the back shelf behind Anthony was a thick blue folder labeled, North Pine, the same contractor listed on Linda's yard irrigation request from 2 months ago, the same company that supposedly planted community trees last spring, even though only one sapling ever appeared. Scene, Caleb gathers his printed photos, the USB drive, and heads straight to the one place left untouched, the county commissioner's office. He met with an auditor named Elaine Mercer, who quietly listened to everything. She watched the Anthony Griggs video twice. Then she leaned in. Elaine, Mercer, we've had suspicions about North Pine for over a year. 3 neighborhoods, same story, money vanishes, projects half done, but nobody ever had a witness. She paused, looked directly at Caleb. Elaine. Until now. Caleb handed her the envelope. Caleb, this isn't just HOA abuse anymore. It's organized fraud. And at least one person went missing for trying to stop it. Elaine promised to open a formal investigation. She warned him to keep quiet, to trust no one. But as Caleb walked out of the county building, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. One word texted to him, run. He looked up and across the street. Someone was watching him from a silver SUV. The corruption runs deeper than anyone imagined, and now Caleb's life might be in real danger. Who's watching him? What really happened to Anthony Griggs? And can Caleb survive long enough to expose everything? Caleb stood frozen on the courthouse steps, phone in one hand, the word run glowing on the screen. Across the street, a silver SUV idled, windows tinted black. Then it rolled forward, slowly, watching him. He didn't wait. Caleb sprinted into the parking structure, heart pounding, hands shaking. He ducked behind a concrete pillar and dialed the only person who might actually help him. Now. Scene, Tasha answers the phone. Tasha, Caleb, what's wrong? CALEB, breathless, someone's tailing me. I think they're tied to Linda or O'Brien. I gave the evidence to a county auditor, Elaine Mercer. She's opening an investigation. Tasha, okay, get to Sam's place. He's got cameras all around. I'll meet you there. Caleb made it out a back entrance and looped through traffic until he was sure no one was following. When he finally got to Sam's place, Tasha was already there waiting, with a flash drive in hand. Tasha, this is from Diane. She found it in Linda's HOA storage unit after the board voted her out. You need to see what's on it. Scene. Sam plugs the flash drive into his laptop. They all lean in. It wasn't just HOA documents. It was bank statements. Thousands of dollars funneled out of neighborhood fees sent to accounts linked to North Peak Restoration, Fisher Property Consultants, and a third company, Griggs Solutions, LLC. Caleb frowning. Wait, Griggs. As in Anthony Griggs. Sam, you think that's a coincidence? Tasha, or was he part of it before he flipped? According to the files, Anthony had originally been Linda and O'Brien's accountant. He helped set up the shell companies. Until something spooked him, he went silent. Then disappeared. Scene. Caleb's phone buzzes. Unknown number. This time, it's a voice call. Voice calm, male. You've stirred up a lot, Mr. Turner. But maybe it's time you came in from the cold. Caleb Cold, who is this? Voice, a friend of Anthony's. Meet me tonight. Industrial lot by the water tower. Come alone, or the next file I leak. Might have your name on it, double quotes. Click, it could have been a trap. But Caleb had no choice. He grabbed a hidden mic Sam offered him, tucked it under his collar, and slipped a GPS tracker in his coat just in case. Scene. Empty industrial lot. Moon overhead. The sound of wind rattling metal sheets. Caleb steps forward. From the shadows, a tall man emerged. Not O'Brien. Not one of Linda's cronies. It was Anthony Griggs alive. Anthony, you weren't supposed to find the video. CALEB, stunned. You're what? You faked your disappearance. Anthony, quiet. They were going to pin everything on me. I built the books, but I didn't know how far it went. People got hurt. One neighbor was hospitalized after his brakes failed. I had to vanish. Anthony handed Caleb a manila envelope. The final piece. Anthony, that's the full paper trail. Emails, wire transfers, voice recordings, including one of O'Brien making threats to a city official. Caleb, why now? Anthony shrugs. You tipped the balance. Linda fell. Now, they're scrambling. You might actually take them all down. Scene. The next day. Elaine Mercer files formal charges with the DA's office. Caleb, Tasha, Sam, and Diane attend a closed-door hearing. O'Brien was arrested, first charged with fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy. Linda was next obstruction, harassment, embezzlement. Even a city inspector was implicated for accepting bribes. News cameras rolled. The HOA name was smeared across headlines. And Caleb. He stood at the center of it all. Neighbors who once avoided him now waved when he walked by. Tasha joined the new board. Sam started writing a blog titled HOA, Watchdog, and Caleb finally installed a proper fence. But one thing still nagged him. That last call, the voice that claimed to be Anthony's friend. Because Caleb never gave anyone his number, and when he tried to call it back, it was disconnected. Scene. Caleb opens the envelope again weeks later. Inside is a flash drive he missed. He plugs it in. One video. Anthony Griggs again. This time, older, bearded, looking tired. Anthony on video. If you're seeing this, they're not all gone. North Pine had clients in 3 other states. And one of them is in your HOA's new board. Be careful who you trust. The HOA war was over, but Caleb had just stepped into something far bigger. What would you do if your quiet neighborhood hid a nationwide fraud ring? And if your HOA had more secrets than you ever imagined? Drop your theories in the comments, smash that like, and subscribe because the next neighborhood might be yours.